I don't like to have debt. I hope our country's not holding that much debt, because at the end of the day, the debt the country's holding is all debt that the citizens owe. We're borrowing money essentially from our children, and that doesn't seem quite right and fair to me.
Well, it depends if you like your children on a given day, I guess. But I mean, we're looking at, like you said, almost $20 trillion. You can partially grow your way out of it, but you can't do that entirely. What would you do?
Neil, I think that, number one, I don't think they're going to knock the debt down in a short period of time.
I agree.
I think that money has to be invested in the economy, and I think that cutting back and not creating new jobs is not going to do it. So I'm not going to worry about the deficit at this moment.
All right, that's how we roll on this show. We always like to reach out to real Americans, how they feel about the ongoing debt issues. So we talked to those two billionaires. Donald Trump's tax plan and the notion that it's going to fix our debt issues. National Taxpayers Union President Pete Sepp. Pete, I kid, but to make the point, these guys are more or less saying, yeah, you want to deal with that, but right now you also want to give the economy a goose. Where do you stand?
Yeah, that's the thing about this whole situation, Neil. Deficits and debt don't matter until suddenly they really matter.
Right.
And we don't know necessarily what point America reaches to say our growth is too slow, we've borrowed too much. But here's an interesting statistic. Take a look at the last two recessions in the early 80s and early 90s. We added about 9 percentage points, expressed as GDP, to the national debt. The recession during Obama's first term, 2 years, we added 31 points. We don't really have the capacity of borrowing to test the notion that we can afford to ignore deficits. We have to pay attention to those almost at the same time as we're cutting taxes. Not necessarily simultaneously, but we're looking at intermediate-term problems here, not long-term problems.
But, you know, you hit a brilliant point here, and that is this notion that we've been kind of getting away with financial murder because rates have been so low that we can carry this debt. But a half-a point uptick in those rates, you know, can add close to $1 trillion on existing debt carried now, just like that. And to say nothing of what could be a normal trend toward a few percentage points more in average interest rates. Now, I'm not meaning to scare people, but I am meaning to remind them this debt isn't going away. Whether you try to spend your way out of it, tax your way out of it, I'm just saying it's there, and it's not getting any better. So of all the solutions you hear being bandied about by Team Trump, including tax cuts to sort of goose the economy, as I said at the outset, to lift up revenue coming into Washington, it would get short-term worse, but they argue longer-term better. Do you buy that?
Not necessarily. Historically, there's a 2 percentage point gap between federal spending and federal revenues. Guess which one is more? It's consistently federal spending. The reason that
even
this
in the
situation...
form of tax cuts.
Yes. Now,
because that is looked upon in static accounting as spending.
Right. Now, I would say that tax cuts will help in the short term. The longer-term drivers, and I don't mean decades from now, I mean only a few years from now, the drivers of federal spending are going to be entitlements. Take a look right now with Social Security. It's currently running cash deficits. The only reason it's keeping above water is that it's cashing in IOUs. That is going to start to become an acute problem in about 5 to 7 more years. And we're not, again, we're not looking at decades from now.
No,
we're looking at within a decade.
They always say that, but it's like waiting for Godot. Everyone waits for it, but Godot's here. You know?
That's right.
All right.
And he's knocking on the door.
He is knocking on the door. I'm not answering, but he's knocking on the door. Pete Sepp, thank you very much, my friend. So good having you.
My pleasure.